So now we're going excuse me. So now we're going to take a look at factoring polynomials where we have y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Now that's the standard form of a quadratic equation, and we are going to look at how we can get them into a factored form where it's x minus some number and x minus another number. It could be plus another number. And we have this handy little box that we're going to use to help us when we're factoring. So the steps that we need to use when we're factoring when x equals -1, or I'm sorry, when it really should say a equals 1. So that coefficient of x squared is 1. So we're going to set up our parentheses as x plus or minus something times x plus or minus something. And then we need to figure out what our operations are. Is it plus, is it minus, or is it a plus and a minus? And so the positive product and positive sum. So when you have x squared plus bx plus c, then both of those parentheses are going to be positive. Okay, if you have a positive product, so it ends with a positive number, and a negative sum, that middle term is negative, then they're both going to be negative. So inside the parentheses, both terms or both signs will be negative. If you have a negative product, so that whole number without the variable is negative, and any sum that you want, you're going to have one positive and one negative. So you'll have different signs. Okay, so basically if your constant is positive, then your signs are the same. If your constant is negative, then your signs are different. Okay, and then you're going to find two values where the product is equal to that constant and the sum is equal to that linear term. And then you can check your answer with the distributive property. So let's take a look at number 1 and follow those steps to factoring. Okay, so we're going to take a look at our constant is 18, right? So that's what we need to find what values are the product of 18, okay, positive 18. And then we know that our middle term is negative 9x. So negative 9x. Okay, so we know that when we look at those values that are going to multiply to give us 18, they both have to be negative because that 9 is a negative 9x. So we know that both of our values have to be negative. So we're going to look at all the pairs that will give us 18. So we have -1 and -18. And I like to go in order. So -2 comes next, times -9, -3, and -6. -4 is not a factor of 18, neither is -5. And then once you do -6, well, we've already done that one with -3, so we're done. So now we need to take a look at which of these pairs is going to add up to give us -9. And that's our -3, oops, -3, and our -6. So now we can say, okay, x minus 3 and x minus 6. Okay, so we've solved the problem, but we're not finished because we do need to make sure we check. So let's go ahead and do our distributive property. So x squared, x times x is x squared. X times -6 is -6x. -3 times x is -3x. And -3 times -6 is positive 18. So we have x squared minus 9x plus 18. Is that the same as the original problem? Yes, it is. We are good to go. All right, let's take a look at number 2. So again, our last term is -6. So I write my -6 over here. My middle term is 5x. Okay, and it really doesn't matter if you put the x in there or not. And so we're looking at the factors of -6 that will give us a positive 5. So we know because that 6 is negative, we have to have two different signs. And the larger one has to be positive to give us that positive 5. So if I have 1, -1, and positive 6, and then I could have -2 and positive 3, I could have -3 and positive 2, but oh, that one doesn't have the larger one as negative, or I'm sorry, as positive, so we don't really need that one, and we're actually done. So now we can take a look at which of these is going to give us a positive 5 when we add them together. And that -1 and 6 will. So we have x minus 1 and x plus 6. So we have factored. Now, again, we need to check it. So x times x is x squared. X times 6 is 6x. -1 times x is negative x. And -1 times 6 is negative 6. So if we combine our like terms, we get x squared plus 5x minus 6. Was that the original problem? Yes, it was. So we are good to go. All right, let's turn the page. And you go ahead and try number 1. Pause the video and try number 1 on your own. All right, so hopefully you saw that x plus 1 times x plus 4 gives you x squared plus 5x plus 4. So now this time try number 2 on your own. Pause the video, try number 2, and then come back and check your work. Okay, so hopefully with number 2, you went through all the steps and you looked at the factors of -3, which you get 1 and -3 and -3 and 1, and you found that none of them are going to add up to -1. So when you do that, if you know that you have exhausted all of the possible factors of that constant and none of them are going to add up to that middle term, that is what we call prime. It is a prime quadratic function or polynomial because it cannot be factored, okay? Now I will give you a hint. None of the others on this page are prime, and most of the time you're not going to run into prime polynomials. So just keep that in mind. All right, so go ahead and complete problems 3 through 6, and then you can check your answers with the teacher when you're done.